Millionaire's fiancé is exposed at the altar, and the cleaning lady saves his daughter. Before we dive into this thrilling story, I want to know where you're watching from. Drop your state or country in the comments below. And if you love intense love stories filled with drama and overcoming the odds, subscribe to the channel. That way, you won't miss a single new episode, and you'll help the channel grow and bring more special content just for you. Charleston was bathed in an unusual glow. The historic and elegant streets seemed to breathe the same air of anticipation that dominated newspapers, radio stations, and social media. The wedding of Adrian Faulkner and Sienna Marwick was being treated like a true spectacle. The elite gossiped about the dress details, influencers competed for invites, and magazines proclaimed that the union symbolized the return of great American romances. From the outside, everything seemed perfect, flawless, worthy of a modern-day fairy tale. Inside the Faulkner mansion, however, the mood was far less magical than the city imagined. As she carefully polished the railing of the grand staircase, Mara Ellington watched Sienna stride across the hall with steady steps and a rehearsed smile. The bride was impeccably dressed, surrounded by planners, florists, and busy assistants. Her voice echoed with authority, giving quick, calculated orders. Mara, unintentionally, murmured to herself, "She always looks like she's acting." And in that moment, she realized she had spoken too loud. Sienna turned, her green eyes narrowing with mild irritation. "Is there a problem, Mara?" she asked, her tone far too sweet to hide her displeasure. Mara swallowed hard and quickly replied, "No, Miss Marwick. Just finishing my task." Sienna gave a half smile, but there was no warmth in it. Good. Everything must be perfect. This wedding has to be flawless. Then she turned and walked away, already ignoring the maid's presence. Mara returned to her work, but the unease stayed tight in her chest. It wasn't just Sienna's commanding tone or rigid posture. It was something deeper, as if there was a hidden layer behind that photogenic smile. Something the rest of the world couldn't see, but that her instincts somehow picked up on. Upstairs, Adrian Faulkner watched some of the commotion from the indoor balcony. His eyes first landed on his bride-to-be, glowing and confident among the floral arrangements. The wedding was near, and he was trying to feel the happiness everyone expected of him, trying to believe he was about to live his own fairy tale. But somehow, that happiness felt staged, like a set that was too perfect, too bright, too controlled. When he shifted his gaze to the staircase, he saw Mara in the foyer. The young woman was focused on her work, but something in the way she took a deep breath, in how she tried to hide her unease, caught his attention. And that's when Mara looked up. For a brief second, their eyes met. It wasn't a casual glance. It was a silent, unexpected connection, one that shook Adrian's balance. A deep calm washed over him, as if that single instant held a rare sincerity amidst the chaos. Unsettled by his own reaction, Adrian forced himself to look away. He gripped the railing and inhaled slowly, trying to push away that strange, inappropriate feeling that always came when Mara was near. "I can't feel this, not now," he murmured to himself. Downstairs, Mara also looked away quickly, feeling her face flush. "I shouldn't have looked at him like that," she whispered, returning to her cleaning. But her heart kept pounding faster, betraying that something deep had just happened, even if neither of them had the courage to admit it. The Faulkner mansion remained in full-blown preparation mode, and the sound of hurried footsteps echoed through the hallways, blending with the scent of freshly delivered flowers. Mara, her heart still a little quick from that brief exchange of glances with Adrian, made her way to the side corridor to return the cleaning supplies to the closet. She just wanted a moment of silence to catch her breath, but fate seemed determined to deny her any rest. Before she could enter the small storage room, she heard Sienna's voice coming from the adjoining office. The door was slightly ajar, and the sharp edge in her tone cut through the air like a blade. Mara hesitated, but the phrase that slipped through made her freeze in place. "I already told you he can't find out anything right now. I need you to do your part of the deal." Sienna's voice was razor-sharp, a far cry from the sweet, elegant persona she put on for cameras and even for Adrian. Mara held her breath, the air in the hallway suddenly heavier. She stepped a little closer, driven by concern and by the strange feeling she'd been carrying for days now. Inside, Sienna continued, "If this leaks before the wedding, we lose everything. Got it? Everything. And I won't let go of what I fought to get." There was a short pause, followed by an impatient sigh. Then, in an even lower voice, "He trusts me blindly. And that's exactly why this is going to work." Mara's heart started to race. A chill ran down her spine as she realized that, whatever this plan was, it involved Adrian. The calm she'd tried to regain was replaced by a spark of fear. Instinctively, she stepped back, but her hand brushed against a cabinet door, creating a sharp thud. Sienna cut the call instantly. The office door opened slowly, revealing Sienna with her green eyes locked onto Mara like she'd just caught an intruder. The contrast between her perfect appearance, flawless blonde hair, delicate makeup, a light-colored dress enhancing her poised stance, and the cold, calculating expression on her face made Mara swallow hard. Sienna walked toward her, her heels echoing down the now silent hallway. When she stopped in front of Mara, she tilted her head slightly as if assessing a defenseless prey. "Be careful what you see, Mara." Her voice was soft, but dripping with threat. "Or you could lose more than you think." Mara felt a tightness in her chest. Her hands began to tremble subtly as she gripped her cleaning rag. She tried to respond, but her voice faltered. I wasn't listening to anything, Miss Marwick. I was just—" "Of course you were," Sienna cut in, stepping even closer. The expensive perfume she wore surrounded her like a suffocating fog. "And let me make one thing clear. People who get involved in what they shouldn't tend to regret it." Before Mara could react, a male voice cut through the tension behind them. "Mara? Are you all right?" Adrian was walking down the corridor, wearing a light blue dress shirt that made his grayish eyes stand out even more. His face showed real concern. There was nothing staged in the way he approached. Seeing the tension between them, he frowned. Sienna quickly changed her expression. The rigid face softened into a rehearsed sweetness in an instant. "Darling, we were just talking about the preparations. Mara's just a little overwhelmed." Adrian ignored the vague explanation and looked directly at the maid, noticing her quick breathing and the uneasy flush in her cheeks. "Mara?" he repeated, more gently. "You look frightened. Did something happen?" Mara immediately looked away, unable to meet the eyes that always left her feeling exposed. Her voice came out low, hesitant. "No, Mr. Faulkner. Everything's fine." "I was just surprised to hear Miss Marwick call my name." Sienna shot a sharp glance at the maid, catching the way Adrian was now standing protectively close. Her fingers curled into a tight fist for a brief moment, before she regained composure. A silent crack of jealousy formed in her chest. Adrian stepped forward, ignoring his fiancée's sudden change in demeanor. "If you need a break, I can have someone cover for you for a bit." Mara shook her head, trying to hold herself together. "Thank you, but I'm fine. I promise." When Adrian gently touched her shoulder, a gesture meant to comfort, Sienna felt her blood boil. Her artificial smile faltered for a second. Her eyes, once cold, now flickered with something else. A restless flame that revealed Mara had just become an unexpected threat. The tension lingered in the air for a few seconds until Sienna touched Adrian's arm with feigned lightness. "Love, we need to talk to the decorating team before they mess something up. Can you come with me?" Adrian hesitated. He looked at Mara again, still sensing something was off. "If you need me, just call," he whispered to her before walking off with Sienna. Mara remained there, frozen in the silent hallway, her heart still racing. She leaned against the wall and took a deep breath, trying to chase away the fear now settling into her bones. She didn't know exactly what Sienna was hiding, but she felt this was only the beginning of something far bigger and far more dangerous. And for the first time, she was certain her life was about to change, even if she didn't yet understand how or why. The news hit Charleston like a thunderclap the next morning. Headlines popped up across websites and morning shows featuring flawless images of Sienna Marwick alongside words that stunned the city. The millionaire's fiancé was broke. Business people whispered about the sudden collapse of her sponsorship deals. Brands pulled their partnerships, and journalists revealed that Sienna had been hiding massive debts for months. Inside the Faulkner mansion, Sienna paced frantically across the office, clutching her phone so tightly it seemed to leave marks on her fingers. Her voice came out in harsh whispers, trying not to draw the staff's attention. "You promised this wouldn't leak yet. I need this wedding to finalize our deal. Do you understand? Without it, you lose your share and I lose mine." On the other end of the line, the man's voice was far too calm, almost taunting. "Then hurry up, Sienna. The clock is ticking." She squeezed her eyes shut, breathing tensely. "I'll do whatever it takes to make sure Adrian keeps trusting me. But I want the contract signed right after the ceremony. No delays." She ended the call quickly as she heard footsteps approaching in the hallway. While Sienna's world seemed to crumble behind closed doors, another scene was quietly unfolding elsewhere in the mansion. Mara was walking down the hallway toward the inner garden when she heard a soft, muffled sob. She stepped back a few paces and found Hazel, the 6-year-old girl, sitting on the floor, clutching a teddy bear tightly to her chest. The little girl's golden curls had fallen over her face and her cheeks were streaked with quiet tears. Mara knelt beside her carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Hazel, sweetie, what's wrong? Are you hurt?" The girl shook her head, wiping her nose with the sleeve of her dress. "It's not pain. It's just Mommy Sienna said I get in the way, that I don't look good in the photos." Mara's heart cracked. She gently took the little girl's hand in hers and spoke in a soft, soothing voice. "You're never in the way. You're a wonderful little girl, Hazel, and you don't have to be perfect for anyone. You just have to be you." The child looked up at her with wounded innocence and asked, "Do you think Daddy would be sad if I wasn't in the pictures?" Mara gave her a warm, honest smile. "Your dad would be sad if you weren't by his side. He loves you more than any photo could ever show." Hazel leaned in and hugged Mara, who held her carefully, running her hand through the girl's golden curls. Anyone passing by would have seen only a small, tender refuge formed by two souls in the middle of chaos. And that's exactly how Adrian found them. He stopped a few steps away, taking in the scene unnoticed. Mara knelt on the soft carpet, holding his daughter like she was part of her own heart, while Hazel nestled into her with complete trust. It was such a simple image, yet so full of truth, that something inside him seemed to break. How can someone so humble radiate so much love? He whispered to himself, feeling a sudden ache in his chest. At that moment, Mara looked up and saw him. Their eyes met again, and Adrian felt that same strange, grounding calm he'd felt from their very first glance. He tried to mask it as he stepped forward slowly. "Hazel," he called softly, kneeling beside them. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" The girl ran into his arms, and he embraced her gently. "Mara took care of me," Hazel said, still sniffling. Adrian looked at Mara with sincere gratitude. Thank you. I don't know what we'd do without you. Mara blushed slightly and lowered her eyes. I just did what anyone would do, Mr. Faulkner. Her reply made Adrian smile in a way he never could when he was with Sienna. A real smile, unforced light, revealing a side of him few ever got to see. And Sienna, standing silently at the end of the hallway, watching the three of them together, felt something more dangerous than rage. She felt fear. Fear of losing control over the one thing she'd fought the hardest to win. That afternoon, the mansion's main hallway was quiet, lit by the soft light streaming in through the large glass windows. Mara was heading upstairs with a basket of freshly laundered bed linens when she heard voices coming from the guest bedroom. Sienna had turned into a temporary walk-in closet. The door was slightly ajar, and the sound of a drawer being slammed shut caught her attention. She hesitated for a moment but noticed the room was empty. Sienna had just hurried out, leaving a few folders scattered on the desk. As a staff member, Mara was supposed to simply tidy up the space. But as she gathered the papers to put them away, something caught her eye. Contracts bearing the name of one of Adrian's business rivals, filled with clauses about the transfer of internal information, profit-sharing agreements, and scheduled payments set to occur after the wedding. A chill ran up her arms. The words on the page seemed to vibrate, shouting silent warnings. This can't be right, she murmured, clutching the documents to her chest. She remembered Hazel crying and Sienna's sharp words from the day before. The sense of danger was no longer something she could ignore. Heart racing, Mara closed the folder and left the closet in a rush. She hurried down the stairs in search of Adrian, who was in the living room speaking with the estate manager. He was wearing a light gray dress shirt, his tone firm, but his expression softened the moment he saw Mara approaching, visibly distressed. Mara? He called, stepping toward her. Is something wrong? She took a deep breath, gripping the folder tightly. Mr. Faulkner, I found something you need to see. It's about Miss Marwick. The words had barely left her lips when a voice sliced through the air like a knife. What exactly do you think you're doing, Mara? Sienna appeared at the top of the staircase, wearing a sleek blue silk dress that highlighted her icy eyes. She descended slowly with calculated steps, as if preparing for the perfect performance. Once at the bottom, she snatched the folder from Mara's hands with a sharp motion. You went into my room? She asked, holding the folder up for everyone to see. You went through my personal things? Mara stepped back, her legs trembling. I didn't go in without permission. The door was open and I was just trying to tidy up. Sienna didn't let her finish. I knew it. She snapped, her voice trembling with fury. I knew from the beginning you were getting too familiar in this house. Now it's clear. You tried to steal my documents. Nearby staff had stopped to watch. The estate manager looked on, stunned. Adrian furrowed his brow, glancing between Sienna and Mara, trying to make sense of what was unfolding. Mara raised her hands, desperate. I would never do that. I was only trying to warn you about these contracts. There's something in them that doesn't seem right. I was trying to help. Sienna laughed, a sharp, wounded, theatrical laugh. Help? By snooping in my room? Digging through my things? What kind of help is that? It's not true, Mara insisted, her eyes welling up. I only saw the documents because they were open. I thought he deserved to know. Sienna turned to Adrian, her expression wounded. Love, we can't tolerate this behavior. She's crossed a line. This employee should be dismissed immediately. A heavy silence fell like a weight over the room. Adrian inhaled slowly and looked at Mara. There was anguish in his eyes, a part of him wanting so badly to believe in her innocence. "Mara, tell me the truth. Did you really go through Sienna's documents?" Her heart broke at the doubt in his gaze, the same gaze that had offered her comfort only hours before. "I just wanted to help, Mr. Faulkner, I swear." Before Sienna could press again, a small pair of arms wrapped tightly around Mara's waist. Hazel had come running, tears streaming down her face. "Don't send her away, Daddy," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "Please. Mara didn't do anything wrong. She's good. She always takes care of me." The little girl clung to Mara like she was the only safe place left in the house. Adrian stood frozen. His eyes moved from his daughter to the housekeeper, who was trying to hold herself together despite the emotional blow. The scene tore at him. Part of him wanted to protect Mara, to believe every word she said. But another part feared what his own feelings were starting to uncover. Sienna crossed her arms, her anger simmering beneath the surface. "Adrian, you're not seriously going to let your daughter dictate household decisions. She's just a maid. And she has crossed every line." The tension in the room became almost unbearable. Adrian finally closed his eyes for a moment, wrestling with his own inner conflict. When he opened them, his hesitation was written all over his face. "Mara, I need time to think about what to do." The words hit her like a blow. Hazel hugged her tighter, sobbing harder. The air inside the mansion turned cold, as if the fate of the entire household was about to shatter. And Sienna, watching Adrian's fragility and the pain so clearly etched in Mara's eyes, realized that the real threat wasn't inside those folders. The real threat was the bond beginning to form between them. The mansion was buzzing with luxurious preparations on the eve of the wedding. The decorating team moved in and out, carrying arrangements of white flowers, while Sienna walked through the rooms, showing every detail to her social media followers. Her phone remained raised the entire time, capturing every step, every gesture meticulously crafted to project absolute elegance. "Take a look at this space, everyone," she said, running her hand through her perfectly styled blonde hair. "Tomorrow we'll have a ceremony straight out of a movie. Everything is flawless." Meanwhile, Hazel was playing alone behind a large floral arrangement. Her golden curls were messy, and she was breathing heavier than usual. She tried to get Sienna's attention with a soft voice. "Sienna, I don't think I feel well." Sienna ignored her, turning her face back to the camera. "Guys, you have no idea how much work this is. It's exhausting, but every second is worth it." Hazel's breathing started to falter. The little girl brought her hand to her chest, trying to draw in air, but it wouldn't come. Fear filled her blue eyes. Mara, who was organizing linens near the entrance hall, heard a sound she recognized instantly, the short, broken wheeze of a respiratory attack. She dropped everything and ran to the indoor garden. There, she found Hazel on her knees, struggling desperately to breathe. "Hazel," she called, crouching down quickly. "Breathe with me, sweetheart. Slowly. I'm right here." The girl shook her head, panicked. "I can't, it hurts." Mara held her gently, supporting her against her chest. I know. Let's do this together. Breathe in a little, there we go. I know it's hard, but you can do this." Sienna glanced over and scoffed. "Hazel, not now. Don't make a scene. I'm filming." The sentence stabbed through Mara like a knife. She looked up, completely stunned. "She's having an attack. Stop recording and call Adrian." Sienna didn't even lower the phone. "You always overreact, Mara. Kids are dramatic, and I have an image to uphold." Shock gave way to fury, but Mara kept her focus on the girl. She knelt on the floor with Hazel in her arms and began the procedures she had learned in nursing school, calming the breath, reducing anxiety, adjusting posture. With each passing second, the wheezing grew louder. "Stay with me, Hazel." "Look at me," Mara said, her voice trembling but steady enough to reassure. "You're strong. You've been through this before." "I'm here." The girl tried to inhale again, failed, and her body shook. That's when Adrian rushed into the garden, drawn by the sound of something crashing and panicked voices. When he saw Hazel in Mara's arms, pale and fragile, his world seemed to stop. "Hazel!" He ran to them, desperation on his face. Mara looked up for a moment but didn't release the girl. "She's having an attack. But she'll be okay, I promise." Adrian knelt beside them, his own breath short from panic. "What can I do? Mara, tell me." "Stay with her," Mara said, carefully transferring Hazel to his arms. "She needs to feel safe." Hazel clung to her father's neck, breathing in short, painful bursts. Adrian held her with all the love he had while Mara placed a steady hand behind the girl's neck, guiding her through the steps to regulate her breathing. Gradually, the air began to flow, first in small gasps, then more steadily. Hazel let out a soft sob and rested her head on her father's shoulder. When the episode finally passed, Mara released a trembling breath, overwhelmed. Adrian felt a sudden urge to embrace her too. He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You saved my daughter." Again. Mara tried to respond, but her voice failed. He touched her arm gently, a thank you, but also a wordless plea for something he couldn't name. And in that simple, charged gesture, their eyes met. It was as if the world vanished around them. Mara felt her heart pound so hard she thought she might faint. Adrian, for a moment, forgot his fear, lost in the depth of her gaze. There was gratitude, admiration, and something more. Something burning quietly, something they had both tried to deny but could no longer ignore. Sienna, standing several feet away, saw everything. Her eyes narrowed. The phone, still pointed forward, nearly slipped from her hand. The scene before her was more dangerous than any health scare, more threatening than any exposed contract. It wasn't just Hazel in her father's arms. It was Mara taking a place Sienna would never, ever allow herself to lose. The big day dawned with Charleston wrapped in a light mist, as if even the weather sensed that something monumental and dangerous was about to unfold. The church chosen by the Faulkners was old, made of pale stone, with stained glass windows that filtered sunlight into vibrant patterns on the floor. Guests arrived in their finest attire, whispering excitedly about the wedding of the year. Journalists and influencers crowded the steps, ready to capture every moment of this grand social event. Inside, the orchestra tuned their instruments, filling the space with soft, elegant notes. Adrian stood at the altar, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit, but the calm he pretended to wear concealed a storm of emotions. After Hazel's health scare and Sienna's relentless pressure for perfection, he'd barely slept the night before. Something deep inside him screamed that things were out of place, like fate was pushing him toward a point of no return. Still, he stood there, trying to believe that this wedding marked the beginning of a new family. Mara was quietly seated at the back of the church, near the extra chairs reserved for authorized staff. She wore a simple dress she had altered herself, and her eyes stayed on Hazel, who was in the front row with her nanny. The little girl looked tired, but smiled at Mara every time their eyes met. Mara smiled back, though her heart was heavy. She didn't know what to expect from this day, but she could feel a shadow hanging over the ceremony. The guests' murmurs ceased as the church doors opened, revealing Sienna Marwick. She stepped down the aisle in the most extravagant white dress imaginable. The fabric shimmered beneath the stained glass light, and a calculated smile adorned her face. She was the picture of a triumphant bride, the woman who believed she had won. The orchestra began to play, filling the church with a moving melody. Sienna walked slowly, savoring every admiring glance. She moved like she was gliding across her own ego, convinced the red carpet had been laid out just for her. Adrian took a deep breath when he saw her. He tried to smile, but something inside him curled tight. Sienna was nearly at the altar when the unexpected happened. A sharp static crackled through the church speakers. The musician stopped playing. Some guests looked around, puzzled. Sienna halted midway down the aisle, frowning. Then a voice echoed. Her voice. "I already told you he can't find out anything right now. I need this wedding to close the deal. If this leaks before, we lose everything." The guests turned to each other in disbelief. The recording continued, slicing through the air like a blade. "He trusts me blindly, and that's exactly why it'll work. After we sign, I'll deliver what I promised. It'll be too easy." Sienna stood frozen, eyes wide. A silence so heavy fell over the church that it felt impossible to breathe. Even Hazel, too young to fully understand, sensed something terrible had happened. Adrian felt his heart stop for a moment. His stunned expression shifted into raw shock. He looked directly at Sienna, who forced a weak smile, still clinging to denial. "Adrian, it's not what it sounds like," she said, her voice cracking for the first time. "It's fake. A cruel prank." "You know I would never. It's your voice, Sienna," Adrian said, cutting her off, his voice low and broken. "I'd recognize it anywhere." The guests began to whisper, some discreetly recording with their phones. Sienna felt the ground vanish beneath her. "I can explain," she insisted, taking a step toward the altar. "Someone did this to hurt me." The mask she had so carefully crafted began to crack under hundreds of watching eyes. At the back of the church, Mara brought a hand to her chest. There was no satisfaction in witnessing this, only a deep ache. She knew the truth. And she knew this revelation was just the beginning. Adrian let out a long, pained breath. "You were going to destroy everything I've built, everything I am." Sienna tried to get closer, but he stepped back. The gesture struck her like a blow. For the first time, the unwavering certainty in her eyes vanished. And the entire church watched as her once untouchable reign crumbled before the altar. The recording still hung in the air like a sentence when a new sound echoed, a dry click from the church's media system. Instinctively, the guests turned toward the screens installed near the altar, originally set to broadcast the ceremony, but now displaying something entirely different. The video began without warning. Sienna, in a dimly lit parking lot, wearing a light coat and dark sunglasses. She looked around, visibly nervous, until a man appeared. Tall, well-dressed, commanding, Adrian's business rival. Before anyone could react, the two met and shared a quick, urgent, intimate kiss. Then she gripped his shirt collar and whispered something to him. No audio, but the body language spoke volumes. It was enough to show undeniable complicity. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the church, growing louder and heavier. Hands covered mouths, heads turned toward Adrian, toward Sienna, disbelief on every face. The screen froze on the kiss, capturing the precise moment of betrayal. Sienna's color drained. This is fake," she cried, raising her hands in a panic. "Someone's trying to destroy me. It's a lie. You're all being manipulated." Guests recoiled at her outburst. Adrian remained still, his chest rising and falling unevenly, his eyes locked on the image that shattered everything he thought he knew. Desperate, Sienna pointed to the back of the church. It was her. She screamed, voice shaking with fury. "That maid, Mara. She planned all this because she's obsessed with you, Adrian. She always has been. She wants to take my place." All eyes turned. Mara, standing quietly off to the side, suddenly felt hundreds of stares pierce through her. Her face went pale. Her hands trembled. She had never planned to be part of this moment, certainly not to be exposed like this, accused in front of the entire city. "I didn't do this," she managed to say, stepping back, fear rising in her voice. "I would never do something like this." "Liar," Sienna roared, stepping toward her. "You always wanted to be near him. You used Hazel to get attention. You're sick." "Enough." Adrian's voice cracked through the room like thunder. The entire church fell silent. He took a few slow steps forward, away from the altar, until he stood only a few feet from Sienna. His gaze, once filled with confusion, was now clear and cold. For the first time, he didn't see Sienna as the perfect woman he once thought he had chosen. He saw the truth, raw, cold, cruel. "Mara would never do something so vile," he said, voice deep and steady despite the hurt. "But you would." Sienna blinked repeatedly, as if hoping the words would vanish if she refused to believe them. But they didn't. Her smile vanished. Her poise collapsed. Her control crumbled. "Adrian, you can't believe her over me," she pleaded, trying to grab his arm. He pulled back. "You don't understand. I did this for us. To secure our future. I love you." Adrian shook his head, eyes full of disbelief. "You only love yourself, Sienna." The words hit her so hard she staggered, clutching the nearby pew for balance. In a moment of total desperation, she screamed, "You'll all regret this. Every one of you." Security, alerted by the event staff, moved quickly. They escorted her out of the aisle as she struggled, screaming and crying, right in front of the guests and the cameras broadcasting everything to the press outside. Then came silence again. Mara, humiliated and terrified, used the chaos to try to slip away. She wove between guests, eyes downcast, desperate to disappear before anyone could judge her for something she never did. Her breath was short, her chest tight. All she wanted was to leave. But before she could reach the side exit, a hand gently caught her wrist. Not forcefully, but with a softness that sent a shiver down her spine. Mara. She turned slowly, and there was Adrian. His shirt was wrinkled from the commotion, his eyes still raw from the pain, but there was something else in them now. Something deeper, something burning, reaching out. "Don't go," he said in a firm whisper. "I need you here." The world seemed to stop for the second time that day. Mara opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. There was too much emotion lodged in her throat. Adrian took one step closer, still holding her wrist gently, as if afraid she'd vanish if he let go. "Please," he whispered again, voice full of vulnerability. "Stay." And in that quiet moment, surrounded by a shattered ceremony, the weight of exposed lies, and an uncertain future, something new began. Something real. Something that Sienna could never, ever destroy. The church hall was still buzzing with nervous murmurs from Sienna's explosive exit when a sudden realization struck Adrian like a silent alarm. He turned to look at the pew where Hazel should have been. It was empty. The nanny sat there, panic in her eyes, glancing around helplessly. "Hazel?" Adrian called out, his voice already tight with emotion. "Hazel!" No answer. Panic clawed up his throat like fire. He shoved past guests, flinging open doors, searching every shadowed corner. "Hazel, sweetheart, answer me." The once grand church now felt like a suffocating maze. Mara, still reeling from everything, understood immediately from the terror in Adrian's face. Without hesitation, she ran through the back of the church, calling out with a trembling voice, "Hazel, where are you?" She wove between pews, checked side aisles, dashed down the sacristy hall until she heard it. a faint, broken wheeze. A sound she knew all too well. Her heart froze. Skirting a large marble column near the side altar, she found Hazel collapsed on the floor, clutching her chest, fighting for air in short, tortured gasps. Her cheeks were red, soaked with silent tears. "Oh God, Hazel!" Mara cried, dropping to her knees so fast she nearly fell. "Sweetheart, look at me. I'm here. I'm here." The little girl tried to breathe, but the air wouldn't come. Her small body trembled, the wheezing intensifying. Mara cupped her face in both hands, her own tears beginning to fall. "Hazel, listen to me, breathe with me," she whispered, her voice both soft and shaking. "I know it hurts. I know. But you've done this before, and you won. Please, stay with me. Don't give up." Adrian arrived moments later, wild with fear. The instant he saw his daughter gasping for breath on the floor, something shattered inside him. "Hazel," he screamed, racing toward them. "No, please, no." Mara didn't release the child for a second. "Adrian, she needs calm. If she panics, it'll get worse. Help me make her feel safe." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. There was fear, but there was courage too. Hazel reached out a tiny hand and grasped Mara's arm. That simple, instinctive gesture nearly broke Adrian's heart. With care, Mara eased Hazel into her lap, gently lifting her upper body, just like she'd been trained to do. "Breathe slowly, sweetheart," she murmured, brushing back the girl's curls. "Please, Hazel, stay with me." Adrian knelt beside them, clutching Hazel's hand and Mara's, as if they were both the only thing keeping him anchored. His eyes locked with Mara's, filled with desperation but also hope. Hope that she could save them again. And slowly it began to happen, a tiny stream of air, then another, until Hazel's breathing, though shaky, began to even out. She whimpered softly, her small body collapsing into Mara's arms like a flower folding in on itself. Mara let out a sob of relief, stroking the girl's golden curls. "That's it, my love. You did it. You're so strong." Adrian dragged a hand over his face, his entire body trembling with the aftermath. And in that moment, when he realized Hazel was safe, instinct overruled everything. He pulled Mara into a hug. It was fierce, desperate, long, not just a thank you, not just relief. It was the embrace of someone who had almost lost everything and found salvation in someone unexpected. His chest pressed against hers, his arms wrapped around her like a lifeline. Mara collapsed into the hug, crying softly into his shoulder, not just from fear, but from the weight of everything she had been holding back. Hazel stayed nestled between them, embraced by both, as if this was where she had always belonged. Adrian didn't move. His face remained close to Mara's, breathing her in, grounded by her presence and the scent of soft perfume and church flowers. And then he realized he didn't want to let her go. Mara, too, didn't open her eyes right away. But when she did, she found Adrian already looking at her, with a gaze she had never seen before. It held gratitude, protection, and something else. Something forbidden, something powerful. Something that neither of them could deny anymore. Because that hug wasn't just a hug. It was a moment that broke walls. That changed paths. That rewrote destinies. And Adrian, still holding her hand, knew it with absolute certainty. The scandal from the wedding didn't take long to explode into something far bigger. Out in the church parking lot, as guests tried to piece together what had just happened, police vehicles pulled up. Officers emerged with a warrant in hand, ready to arrest Sienna. She screamed, fought, pleaded for innocence, but the videos, the audio recordings, the contracts, they spoke louder than any desperate words. "You don't know what you're doing. I'm the victim here." She shouted as she was placed into the back of a police car. Flashes went off from every direction. Reporters narrated every second. And ironically, the wedding Sienna had dreamed of turning into the event of the year had become her very public downfall. Adrian stood at a distance, holding Hazel's hand tightly. His expression was a mix of pain and relief. He hadn't wanted things to end like this, but the truth had to come out. A deep ache pressed in his chest as he remembered every warning sign he had ignored. The weight of betrayal and self-blame nearly crushed him. A few feet away, Mara stood quietly, trying not to draw attention. But all eyes seemed to drift toward her. The young woman who had saved a child, uncovered a lie, and stood her ground against a powerful woman with nothing but courage. A journalist approached with a camera pointed at her. "Mara Ellington, can we get a few words from the hero of this wedding?" Mara flushed, shook her head, and took a step back. "I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone would do. I only wanted to help." But it was too late. The story was already out. Within minutes, headlines across the internet called her the brave housemaid who exposed a web of lies. None of that mattered to Adrian as much as the memory of seeing Mara hold his daughter, the way she fought to keep Hazel breathing, the raw emotion in her voice as she begged the girl to stay alive. He would never forget that. Later, back at the mansion, Hazel was fast asleep after being checked by a doctor. The house was quiet, dimly lit, like a scene after a storm. Adrian made his way downstairs, searching for Mara. He found her in the kitchen, putting away dishes left behind by the team that had catered the now-aborted celebration. She moved quickly when she saw him, almost as if she still feared stepping somewhere she didn't belong. "Mara," he called softly. She froze but didn't fully turn around. "Yes, Mr. Faulkner? Do you need something?" "I do," he replied, stepping closer. "I need to thank you, truly. Not just for today, but for everything you've done." She looked down, trying to hide the blush rising in her cheeks. "I was just doing my job." "No," he said, taking another step forward. "You did far more than that. You saved my daughter, twice, and I don't have the words to explain what that means to me." Mara clasped her hands together nervously. "I just wanted her to be okay. Hazel she's such a sweet girl. She deserves to feel safe." Adrian smiled, but it was a quiet, wounded smile touched by regret. "You protected her in a way I should have. I should have seen who Sienna really was. I should have listened when you tried to warn me." She finally lifted her gaze to meet his. Adrian's eyes were no longer clouded by confusion or doubt. They were clear, deep, full of gratitude and something else that made her breath catch. He inhaled slowly before speaking again. "I don't know what would have happened to Hazel if you weren't there. And I don't know what would have happened to me." Mara's heart twisted. She wanted to say something, anything, but the fear was still there. Fear of stepping too far, feeling too much, getting hurt. "Adrian, you don't have to say that." "I do," he insisted, "because it's true." She looked away, searching for air. "I'm afraid," she admitted softly. "Afraid of what people will say. Afraid of getting involved in something I shouldn't. Afraid of what all this means." Adrian took one last step, close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. "I'm afraid too," he said. "But every time you look at me, I feel something I haven't felt in years." Her eyes shimmered. She didn't want to ask, but the words escaped her anyway. "And what do you feel?" "Truth," he whispered. The scandal that once shattered Charleston eventually gave way to something else, something softer, quieter, and far more enduring. Months after the storm, the Faulkner mansion was no longer the same place. The echoes of Sienna's downfall left a strange kind of peace behind. The staff worked more lightly. Hazel laughed again with the innocence only children can truly reclaim. And the silence that once weighed heavy in the halls had been replaced by a sense of warmth. Something Mara had never imagined she'd witness inside those walls. Mara, now deep into her nursing studies, split her time between demanding hospital shifts and the comforting routine at the mansion. Her days were exhausting. Long hours on her feet, dark circles under her eyes, and the kind of weariness that settled into her bones. But every time she returned, Hazel was there, running into her arms like Mara was her entire world. Adrian watched it all, quietly, from a distance. He saw how hard Mara worked. He saw her study late into the night, take care of his daughter with devotion, and still find it in herself to smile. Not always, but when she did, it was real. And for him, that rare smile was enough to warm places inside him he thought were long frozen. Sienna had broken many parts of him, but Mara slowly was helping him piece himself back together. One evening, after a long day of meetings at Faulkner Industries, Adrian returned home and found Mara in the kitchen. She was making tea for Hazel, wearing a simple apron, her hair tied up in a messy bun, her expression tired but gentle. He stopped at the doorway and just watched. Something in his chest shifted. That simple scene, her presence, her softness, it brought him peace. The kind he hadn't known in years. "You're home early today," Mara said, noticing him and offering a small smile. "I wanted to see how you both were." He stepped in, arms loosely crossed, eyes steady on her. "And I wanted to see you before the day ended." Her eyes dropped to the floor, her cheeks flushing despite the months they had shared the same space. There was still a line she tried not to cross, a fear that held her back. Fear of letting herself feel too much, fear of being hurt, fear that their worlds were too different. And yet, they kept gravitating toward each other. They never spoke the words, not yet, but something strong had taken root between them. It wasn't reckless or rushed. It was slow, steady, born of trust, gratitude, and unspoken affection. Adrian made sure to never overstep, but he was always there, helping her study, listening to her, making her life just a little easier without ever asking for anything in return. "You don't have to do this for me," she'd often say. "I know," he'd always reply, "but I want to." And one golden afternoon, just weeks before Mara was set to finish her degree, Adrian knew it was time. The lake was glowing under the autumn sun, the sky painted in shades of amber and gold. Mara sat at the edge of the dock, hugging her knees, her face calm but distant, as if reliving every twist and turn of the life that had brought her there. Adrian approached slowly. She turned when she heard his steps and offered a quiet smile. "Everything okay?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Yeah," she nodded. "Just thinking. Feels like I've lived a whole lifetime in the last few months. I know what you mean." His voice was low, intimate. "I've changed more than I ever thought I could." "Change isn't always bad," she said softly. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then, gently, he reached out and took her hand. No pressure, just presence. "Mara, can I say something? Honestly?" "Of course," she said, though her heart began to race. "You saved my daughter," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "But you also saved me. From a hollow marriage. From a life of pretending. From choices I didn't even realize were destroying me." Her eyes filled with tears. Adrian, he held her hand tighter. "I spent years believing I had to maintain this perfect image. Perfect family. Perfect life. But you showed me that none of that matters without truth. Without someone who truly cares. Someone who stays when everything else falls apart." She blinked slowly, fighting the tremble in her lips. I never wanted your gratitude. I just wanted you and Hazel to be happy. We are, he said, because you stayed, because you didn't run when everything crumbled. The wind carried fallen leaves across the dock. Gently, Adrian reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Mara, can I love you? She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, gathering all her courage. When she opened them again, they shimmered with unshed tears. I already love you, she whispered. Since the day I saw how you held Hazel, I was just afraid. So afraid. I was too, he murmured, moving closer. But I'm not anymore. The kiss that followed wasn't sudden. It was the inevitable answer to everything they hadn't dared to say, slow, tender, filled with everything they'd carried in silence for months. His fingers laced through hers, and her hand found his face as if they had always known where to go. When they pulled back, their foreheads still touching, a small laugh interrupted them. They turned. Hazel stood a few feet away, wearing a soft cotton dress, her golden curls lit by the last rays of the setting sun. I knew it. She grinned, running to them. I knew you were going to be a family. Mara hugged her tight, overwhelmed. Adrian wrapped his arms around them both, forming a circle of love, unbroken, unshakable. And as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, bathing them in golden light, one truth settled gently over the scene like a blessing. True love doesn't rise from luxury. It grows in the quiet spaces where truth lives, where someone stays when everyone else walks away. And that's how this story ends. A journey of twists, courage, and a love born from truth. Now it's your turn. What did you think of this journey? Rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. I want to know how much it moved you. If you liked it, like the video, share it with someone who loves a good drama. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow our next stories. And before you go, I've prepared another deeply emotional story, one that might touch your heart even more. Don't miss it, and deep peace. Mara trembled slightly, her heart racing so hard it almost hurt, and Adrian saw that and didn't rush it. He simply stood there, quietly, with a presence so gentle, so honest, that it made her feel something she'd never let herself feel before. Safe, not just protected, but seen. It wasn't a touch that passed between them in that moment. It was something deeper, something forbidden, something inevitable.